Hello and very warm welcome to the Amish Shackle 5858. I am Amish Shackle. Following are the news headlines which have been reported by American, European, Canadian, Asian, African, and uh, European news channels. So please let's go to the headlines.
Tonight, all eyes on Tropical Storm Erin, now on track to become the first Atlantic hurricane of the season, set to become a major hurricane now. Tropical Storm Erin with winds up to 45 miles per hour right now. The forecast suggesting Erin could become a major hurricane by this weekend. Tonight, you'll see what the models now show. Will it hit the U.S. or will it turn? And the risk up and down the East Coast. Ginger Z is here. Also tonight, the drownings outside New York City and the race to save multiple swimmers caught in rip currents in the Northeast. A father did not survive, his son seriously hurt. And in a separate case, a grandmother drowning. Also tonight, that deadly shooting at a Target. Now we learn a grandfather and his 4-year-old granddaughter were shot and killed in the parking lot. Also, a worker collecting shopping carts was killed. Tonight, the high-stakes summit. President Trump, Vladimir Putin now 3 days from now in Alaska. And the White House tonight is now calling this meeting a listening exercise. So will there be any deal to end the war? Chilling new details tonight, a gunman opening fire at the CDC. More than 500 rounds recovered. More than 150 windows shattered with bullets. You'll remember a police officer killed, and tonight some CDC workers are now sounding the alarm over the rhetoric involving vaccines. Tonight, 800 National Guard troops now arriving in Washington, D.C. President Trump's federal takeover of the police in the nation's capital. Tonight, the brazen armored car heist. Surveillance video showing armed suspects approaching the driver. Authorities say stealing hundreds of thousands of dollars. Police officers rushing into a burning home consumed by smoke and flames. Inside, you can see a man crawling on the floor trying to get out. The meteorite crashing through a roof of a home. And tonight, scientists now say it's older than Earth itself. Tonight, Taylor Swift's big surprise and what millions of fans are now looking for tonight. Also, the scam targeting seniors across this country. Thieves stealing billions now, pretending they are grandchildren in need. And what to look out for. From ABC News World Headquarters in New York.
Trump administration announcing a sweeping crime crackdown in our nation's capital, putting the police under investigation, under federal control for 30 days while deploying 800 National Guard troops to the streets.
Crime in D.C. is ending and ending today. We are going to use every power we have to fight criminals here. No more crime rampant in our beautiful capital. No more teenage girls beating a disabled man to death. No more of that. No more drive-bys. We're going to do everything we can. We're going to make D.C. beautiful. We're going to make D.C. safe again.
Our next guest has been doing his part recently helping to convict a D.C. suspect of abduction and attempted rape. Virginia Attorney General Jason Miyares joins us now. Agent Miyares, thank you so much for waking up with us this morning. What is your reaction to what President Trump is doing in Washington, D.C., and how much does it impact neighboring Virginia?
Well, first of all, I don't think it's good for the nation's capital to be when so many people from all over the world come to visit D.C. and they see lawlessness, they see homelessness, and it's absolutely having an impact in Virginia. We have so many citizens in Northern Virginia that work in the district, and they have shared with me, and I've seen and talked to them, as soon as they're done with their workday, whereas before they maybe stayed and went out to dinner at the Kennedy Center, they come immediately back to Virginia. And I just think of, Christy Batista. She was a recent JMU grad, beautiful young woman from Arlington who had gone into the district to go see a concert, and she was brutally stabbed to death at her own hotel. And so these type of stories, the rampant carjacking, the awful violence is absolutely happening in the district, and it's a very, very different model of what we've implemented in Virginia. And what the president wants to do is go after these repeat offenders that are creating such of the lawlessness right now in the district. It's making it unsafe for everyday Virginians, and it should be one of our great cities in America we could brag about. Right now, we can't do that.
Yeah, it's hard to understand why someone can take objection to what President Trump is saying and doing. This is what Democrats are doing. They take objection to everything he says and does. Let's take a look at some of the things that were posted yesterday. Hillary Clinton wrote, as you listen to an unhinged Trump try to justify deploying the National Guard in D.C., here's reality. And then attached the DOJ press release from before Trump took office saying violent crime in D.C. is at a 30-year low. And then House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries says violent crime in Washington, D.C. is at a 30-year low Donald Trump has no basis to take over the local police department and zero credibility on the issues of law and order, yet lost. The only problem with that is, with minimal research, I can see that in 2012, which was actually a 30-year low, that was a 112.5% lower homicide rate than in 2024. So not only are they taking issue with making D.C. safer, they're also
The expanding wildfire threat in Newfoundland and Labrador this Tuesday night. The uncertainty and uneasiness.
It's an overwhelming feeling. It's scary.
Plus, the out-of-control flames on parts of Vancouver Island. The upcoming summit between the American and Russian presidents, amplifying calls for Ukraine to join it, plus what the White House says won't happen. China's steep new tariffs on a multi-billion-dollar Canadian export.
And that will have a devastating impact.
Why canola is being hit and what could be next. And celebrating a jazz genius and piano prodigy.
Oscar set the bar. He showed everyone what is possible.
The exhibit honoring legendary Canadian musician Oscar Peterson.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Wildfires are keeping thousands of Canadians on edge on both ends of the country tonight. On Vancouver Island, a new fire is burning out of control near Port Alberni, prompting the evacuation of a campground and marina. And in Newfoundland and Labrador, water bombers are working all out to try to gain control of fires that are threatening homes near the capital. Heidi Petracek begins our coverage from St. John's tonight. Heidi.
Well, Donna, people in the St. John's area have been trying to go about their day as if things are normal, running errands, going to work, but it's pretty hard to live life like a regular day when you have a wildfire burning on the horizon. It's hard to see right now. It is behind me, but it's windy here and it's blowing the smoke around. You can actually smell it quite strongly, and there are water bombers crossing back and forth here behind me. I'm in an area of the city that's under an emergency preparedness alert. That means people have been told to be ready to evacuate if necessary, but others in the nearby town of Paradise, in parts of that town, they have been told they already have to leave. Residents came to get a look at the wildfire that's so close to their front door. When the immediate fire zone and industrial park was evacuated Monday, Reg Budgel was there.
The boys come knocking at the door telling you got 10 minutes to get out of here.
This is directly behind our property.
So was Alex Driscoll, who took video of flames shooting upward.
From 1 hour to 4 hours, this thing was a blazing inferno.
By late Tuesday afternoon, the fire forced the evacuation of an area in the nearby town of Paradise. Evacuation prepared.
Tonight, inside the takedown, a gunman goes on a shooting rampage in a Target parking lot. The trail of terror through Austin. What we're learning about the people killed. A Target employee wrangling carts, a grandfather and his granddaughter. The accused gunman, bloody and bruised in his booking photo. Scars of Uvalde, 3 years after the hallways of an elementary school changed us forever. What new and unreleased body cam shows us about law enforcement's delayed response. Parents' desperate pleas and the injuries the gunman's own family sustained. Plant disaster. What happened before this explosion and giant smoke plume at that steel plant near Pittsburgh? Our questions for the CEO of U.S. Steel and what workers are telling us about what they saw and heard. Tropical Storm Erin on track to become the first and major hurricane of the season. Where it's headed. Al Roker standing by for us tonight. Federal agents and National Guard take to the streets of Washington. Democrats accuse the president of going too far as the White House calls it a crime crackdown. The new details just in about the Trump-Putin summit in Alaska and why President Zelensky may be out in the cold. What the new inflation report tells us about the economy as markets hit record highs. From smash and grabs to major busts, why thieves are increasingly targeting tens of thousands of dollars of Labubus, the must-have accessory. Nightly News starts right now.
Got an offer from a UK university, but not sure what's next. Worried about your visa doc.
the National Guard troops in Washington, D.C.
Deployed by the president as he takes charge of law enforcement in the nation's capital.
Will other major cities be next?
From CBS News headquarters in New York, this is the CBS Evening News.
Good evening, I'm Maurice Dubois.
I'm John Dickerson.
The police department in Washington says violent crime in the city this year is down 26%, homicide alone down 11%, and robberies down 28%.
One number that is rising is the crime-fighting force, with the president sending in federal agents to help the police. And today, 800 National Guard troops started taking up positions.
Despite the falling crime rate in the city of 700,000 people, the president has declared a crime emergency and taken charge of the D.C. police. Justice correspondent Scott McFarland is in Washington. So, Scott, how was day one with the new sheriff in town?
Hey, Maurice, this first ever takeover of its kind began with 23 arrests and the investigation of another murder. Under law, it can only last 30 days, but the concern is, how does this initiative end?
National Guard troops arrived at the Armory in southeast Washington, D.C. today, 4 miles from the White House. They'll join nearly 900 federal agents and officers that have taken posts on neighborhood streets, helping local police who are now under the authority of the Trump administration. In D.C.'s Anacostia neighborhood, Ron Moten says crime has long plagued his community, but says
Good evening, I'm Amna Navaz.
And I'm Jeff Bennett. On the News Hour tonight, new data shows prices on some goods are beginning to tick up, and the president's tariffs are a key factor.
A State Department report pulls back some of its criticisms of human rights violations around the world.
And the world's largest hunger crisis. Millions face famine and displacement amid the intensifying civil war in Sudan.
We are suffering so much from no food, no water. We are hungry. Our children are naked. We have nothing to eat but animal food. There is no water. We have nothing.
Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Palestinian health officials say Israeli attacks have killed at least 89 people across Gaza over the past day, including 31 people killed while seeking food. Among the dead are 5 Palestinians bombed in a tent sheltering displaced civilians in Al-Mawasi, which Israel's designated a safe zone despite consistently attacking the area. More than 500 others have been wounded by Israel's latest attacks. Meanwhile, Israel's blockade of Gaza has led to 5 more deaths from famine and malnutrition over the last 24 hours, including 2 children. Palestinian health officials say at least 227 people have starved to death due to the siege. Global condemnation is mounting over the assassination of one of the most prominent journalists in Gaza, Al Jazeera correspondent Anas al-Sharif, along with 4 of his colleagues at the network. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is calling for an independent investigation after the 5 journalists were killed in a targeted Israeli strike outside Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza City. European Union officials and international press freedom groups have also denounced the assassinations. A 6th journalist, freelance reporter, Mohammed Al-Khaldi, was also killed in the same strike. On Monday, large crowds of mourners gathered for a funeral procession for al-Sharif and his colleagues, marching from Al-Shifa to Sheikh Radwan Cemetery in central Gaza. This is Palestinian.
Policing guidelines in a generation.
Police forces are told to begin revealing the ethnicity and nationality of anyone charged in high-profile cases.
But the Home Office has stopped short of asking to reveal suspects' immigration status.
Increasing the number of neighbourhood police officers across the country by 3,000 this year as part of a plan for 13,000 additional neighbourhood police PCSOs across the country. Because we've got to bring back neighbourhood policing.
The Home Secretary says local policing is her priority, but will more bobbies on the beach stop the epidemic of shoplifting plaguing British towns and cities?
That's the question. And the American Vice President J.D. Vance has infuriated locals in the Cotswolds, including one Jeremy Clarkson. Stay tuned to find out which political leader he snubbed during his visit as well.
Decades ago, Jim Wren was enduring brutal conditions as a prisoner of war, captured by Japan 3 years earlier.
As the anniversary of the Allies' victory over Japan nears, GB News has spoken to a remarkable veteran who's been honoured with a royal visit from the Duchess of Edinburgh. The idea of spending time together and finding new ways to show people you care. Look at that.
I was about to say enough to make you vomit, but anyway, the Duchess of Sussex is back with another series of this Netflix cooking show, which no one watches, and there's also no sign of Prince Harry.
My husband eats in a day / what I cook for him.
Is feminism, as we know it, dead? Well, Gen Z women are declaring that they want to be taken care of, even if it means giving up their independence. We'll be debating that at 7:20 this morning.
Good morning. Premier League champions Liverpool have reportedly entered talks with Crystal Palace and England defender Mark Gahey in a deal which could see their summer spending bash through £300 million. And we'll hear about the Tottenham player left out tonight's UEFA Super Cup final against PSG for being late.
The heatwave continues, but with that, there's the risk of some showers, which could turn heavy and thundery, especially as we go into tomorrow. Stick around to find out if you're likely to be affected.
On this Wednesday morning, thanks for your company. I'm Eamon Holmes.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is GB News Breakfast.
Heritage. Watch Paris des Arts Notre Dame Special Edition on France 24 and France24.com.
Good morning, I'm Oliver Farry, and this is Daybreak. Volodymyr Zelensky rules out giving up the eastern Donbass region in any settlement with Russia, warning it could be used as a springboard for future Russian attacks. He made the comments ahead of a video conference on Wednesday with European leaders and US President Donald Trump, while Russia made advances of 10 kilometers in the Donbass. I'll be speaking to Emmanuel Shaz in Kiev. 3 died in wildfires across Europe, bringing to 4 the deaths in recent days. A man dies of severe burns while working in a stable near Madrid, while a Hungarian migrant worker also dies of heat-related illness in southern Spain. Elsewhere, a man in Albania also dies in a fire, one of a number of blazes currently raging amid high temperatures across southern Europe. It's liftoff for Ariane 6 in its second commercial flight. Europe's heavy lift launch system took off from the European Space Centre in French Guiana on Tuesday night and puts into orbit the continent's latest generation weather satellite. The White House says that the meeting between Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin in a
This is DW News, and these are our top stories. Volodymyr Zelensky has said that he would reject any Russian proposal to pull Ukrainian troops out of the eastern Donbass region. He warned that withdrawing his country's forces would pave the way for Russia to conduct further offensives and deprive Kyiv of defensive lines. President Zelensky repeated his position that territorial issues should only be discussed after Moscow agrees to a ceasefire. Foreign ministers of 24 countries have issued a joint statement calling for a flood of aid to be allowed into Gaza. It says suffering in the territory has reached unimaginable levels and that famine is unfolding before our eyes. The statement also calls on Israel to allow humanitarian groups to operate in the territory. Some 800 members of the National Guard deployed by Donald Trump to Washington have arrived. This comes a day after he ordered federal forces to take control of the US Capitol's law enforcement, citing what he called a crime emergency. But city leaders have pointed to data showing violent crime is declining and is now at a 30-year low. This is DW News from Berlin. You'll find much more on our website at dw.com.
Wednesday, the 13th of August, your lines. Ukraine's President Zelensky tells the US and Russia decisions about his country can't be made without him in the room. We've got a special report on Israeli settlers taking Palestinian land in the occupied West Bank. 3. We have ignition. 1. And liftoff. One of the US military's most powerful rockets ever is launched into orbit from Cape Canaveral in Florida. And hit the road, Jack. Manchester City's record signing completes a loan move to Everton. A very good morning to you. The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, will take part in an emergency summit.
Today, a childcare worker sacked for sexual misconduct, set to lose his working with children check following an ABC investigation.
What's happened in these circumstances is not acceptable.
A man has faced court charged over the murder of a pregnant woman and her partner in Melbourne's southeast. Israel's bombardment of Gaza City intensifies as dozens of countries, including Australia, call for a flood of aid to enter the Strip. A police gun fired during a dramatic arrest in Sydney's domestic airport terminal. And unions push for a 4-day working week to improve productivity and reduce burnout. He continued to work the sector despite being sacked for sexual misconduct in 2020 after an investigation found he was being toddlers. An ABC investigation has found the childcare system is plagued by a patchwork of regulation, a refusal to share critical information, and authorities failing to act quickly on red flags pointing to is exclusive. Make sure that parents.
The crisis that horrified the country.
Parents left shell-shocked.
Growing up.
This is Asia Now.
Good afternoon, it's 12 p.m. in Singapore and Hong Kong, 9:30 in New Delhi and 11 o'clock in Jakarta. I'm Ilakia Silveraji, your headlines this hour. Typhoon Podol barrels towards Taiwan. Flights have been cancelled and hundreds evacuated as large parts of the island south and east shut down. The wife of impeached former South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol arrested. Kim Kyung-hee taken into custody over allegations of stock fraud, bribery and illegal influence peddling. And Donald Trump will hold a virtual call with Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky amid growing concerns over the upcoming US-Russia summit.
Africa News. The news.
At least 100 Palestinians were killed and some 500 others were injured in the last 24 hours as Israel continues its attacks across Gaza. The Gaza Health Ministry says at least 69 people were killed in airstrikes across several positions, primarily in the north near Gaza City. Others it's the latest in a serious fatal incident involving Israeli-backed U.S. operation by the Gaza Humanitarian Fountain. Israel says it only fires warning shots and disable while GHF claims that no fatal incident have occurred on premises. The aid scheme was announced as a replacement for traditional systems, which have been facing major restrictions to their operation. Many as the initiative, which came after Israel accused of looting aid, slamming it as insufficient. The UN says more than 90% of Gaza's 2 million population are at risk of famine. Gaza's health ministry also said 5 more people died from starvation on Monday, bringing the total famine-related deaths to 227, including 103 children on Tuesday. The UK joins with 27 of its allies, mainly in Europe, condemning the worsening humanitarian suffering in Gaza. The statement, endorsed by France, Germany, and Spain, called on the Israeli government to take immediate steps to alleviate humanitarian suffering.
When U.S. President Donald Trump and his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin meet this Friday in Alaska, the European Union will not be in the room. That the bloc is not invited to a meeting at which key subjects such as the war in Ukraine will be discussed, has European leaders seething with not much to do about it.
The Alaska meeting may offer yet another moment of truth for Europe, because the European Union finds itself sidelined in what could be the most consequential peace effort since the war began, with Trump and Putin set to meet without any European leader officially invited to the table. European leaders were caught by surprise yet again. Instead of asking for a seat at the table, they asked for President Zelensky, to be invited, declaring in a very reactive statement shared only by a few European leaders that any deal between the United States and Russia must include Ukraine.
This analyst says Europe has itself to blame for building decades of dependence on Washington.
We are paying the price of our inability to defend ourselves and our inability to adequately, on our own, support Ukraine. And that means that when you don't have actual power, you will not be invited to this meeting, because it is clearly, of course, in Vladimir Putin's interest that Europe and Ukraine are not there, because Putin will clearly perceive that he's able to get concessions, at least on paper or in rhetoric, from Donald Trump that Zelensky and the European leaders would never agree to.
Europe has given billions of dollars in military and other aid to Kiev, as has the US, fears that it could lose a chance to have a say in how the war ends.
Secretary General to the International Maritime Organization, Arsenio Dominguez, stated that the emerging challenges to global maritime security and threats to shipping are ever present during a United Nations Security Council meeting on Monday.
The safety and security of the maritime sector is fundamental to economic stability, sustainable maritime development, and to livelihoods. Threats are ever present. 2024 alone, nearly 150 incidents of piracy and armed robbery were reported.
The Panama Canal operates under an international treaty ensuring equal access for all nations during both peace and war times.
Traditional maritime threats like piracy and armed robbery remain deeply rooted and in some regions are surging. This is particularly concerned in Southeast Asia, where we are seeing a sharp increase in such attacks. From the Gulf of Guinea and Singapore Straits to the Red Sea and Somali coast. These threats continue to endanger lives and disrupt critical maritime corridors, with far-reaching consequences.
Thank you for watching Ahmed Shakil 5858. I am Ahmed Shakil. I hope you will visit again. Have a good life. Bye-bye.